know if it's, is it? Yeah, okay. All right, so, even though Curtis is my little brother, one of my little brothers, I've always kind of looked up to him, even though he was younger by 3 years, and admire him. In fact, in elementary school in California, we were in the same math class. I wasn't good at math, and he was. So, yeah.
That was motivational for you, I noticed.
But like I said, I always looked up to Curtis. He was a lot of fun, but he just did things really well in his life. He did so many things well, and I admired that. And Curtis, you've been a great brother. Appreciate that. And I always want to listen to things you have to say. And I admire how dedicated you are to your family. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, so Curtis is 11 months and 2 weeks older than me. Not even a year. So we're the same age for like 2 weeks. And so we spent a lot of time together hanging out and growing up. We'd go, in California, we'd go ride our bikes around in the bamboo forests and in the avocado orchards and climb the trees and goofed off, and then we'd move about every 2 years growing up. So we stayed in the same room till, all through high school till he went off to college. So we spent a lot of time together. It was good. It was great. Curtis always
shared the same underwear drawer.
There's no more unifying experience.
Wow.
You're gonna make me cry.
No, but anyway, Curtis always was the straight one that kept me on the straight and narrow and kept bringing me back, reeling me back in. I had a tough time with school, and Curtis was always a good example, and so it was good. One of my favorite things that he and I did together was we'd go to stake dances together. We were the dancing fools.
New order.
And emphasis on food.
Yeah.
So
So
our DJ right here.
Right. So that was one of the things we did together. Is we'd go drive in the car out to Grand Rapids or out to Dayton to the stake dances, and that was fun. We had a lot of fun with that. Anyway, just always big brother, and look up to the big brother. So thank you.
And David's the one who introduced me to New Order,
Yeah.
my favorite band.
You gonna do Love Vigilance for us?
No.
I tried to get Rick to come do that.
And so you know, this is not just for family, so all the friends, please feel empowered to come and take the mic.
So I'm 2 years younger than David, 3 years younger than Curtis. And so when I was old enough to go to stake dances, it was your Curtis and David's younger sister? All the time. I got that my whole life. So I had two memorable older brothers, and everybody loved them. So that was a privilege to be their younger sister. And we had a lot of fun. at those stake dances in his youth too. And I just love Curtis, and I'm gonna miss him terribly. And I have a horrible memory, but I just know that there's so many ways that Curtis has been a blessing to my life. So, just want to thank you. Gonna go next, Roseanne? No. Okay.
Congrats.
My name is Emily Holsinger Butler, and I met Curtis when we were freshmen at BYU. And now I feel like sort of this can of worms has been opened in my brain, and all of these memories are flooding.
I'd also say that we also were in New York together.
Yes,
And
we
DC?
have, and
DC.
DC, our lives have intersected in many places. But it started when we were freshmen at BYU, and I had come to BYU from New York, from Albany, and I felt like everything was very, very different, and people were very, very different, but nobody was more different than Curtis Atkinson. And I remember thinking many times, there is something about Curtis, and I could never figure out what that thing was, but he was. And I could never figure out if Curtis was funny or if he was weird. His music was really different from the music that my friends and I listened to in high school, and he danced different, and he dressed different, and his jokes were different. And then the boys were starting to get their mission calls, and Curtis went to Belgium. And he got up and he told everybody his mission call, and he said he was going to the MTC where he was going to learn to speak Belgian. And I still could not figure out if that was funny or if it was weird. So to the bitter end of the freshman year. So anyway, I am sure that these, and I really have not thought about that since then until tonight. And I think I have this feeling that these memories are going to continue to emerge, for the next week or so. Anyway, love you. Okay, you might hear more from me. Who's next?
Anne Marie?
Speak loud.
Hi, I am Jeanne Marie, and this is my amazing uncle. And I don't know where I got it from, but I heard that my uncle was moving away to start a chocolate factory. And so my brain was like, so my uncle's Willy Wonka. Don't know where I got it from, but I got it somewhere. And so I think I'll always remember you as the sweet Willy Wonka crazy uncle.
I'll do it.
Great.
Hi, so this is my really good friend Curtis, and I've always felt like he's one of my very, very best friends, even though I just met 2 of his kids just now. I'm serious, I've always felt that. And
Introduce yourself.
Oh, excuse me, I thought everybody would know. No, Michael Fordham. I spoke at their wedding. I remember Curtis telling me when he was dating Nettie that one of Nettie's aunts, I believe, would come to Curtis and say, "Do you cherish her, Curtis? Do you cherish her?" Remember that?
She wasn't even my aunt. She was my friend's mom.
Oh, okay.
She was Peter Paul Peer, the violin maker's wife, and she cornered him at the very first time she ever met him. And Curtis was like, "Who's that lady?"
It made quite an impression because he was like, "Yeah, I cherish her." I didn't know what to say. I remember you telling
It was
me
very
about
awkward.
that. It sounded awkward. So Scott, me, Curtis, and Greg lived in this cute little house in Crystal City in Washington, D.C., and we were the 4 Musketeers, and we had lots of parties with the the singles award at the time. It was really a cool time. It was a great time of our lives because we had all graduated from college. We were spending 2 years in Washington, D.C., and right before we all went to grad school. It was just it was a golden time. Best 2 years of my life, I think, actually. It's really, really neat, so love you a lot.
But remember, Curtis always made everybody leave the parties. He'd say, okay, it's too late, everybody go home.
That's right. It was like Matthew Broderick. It's over. Go home.
What happened to Emily?
She's right there. Emily Butler?
Oh,
or
no,
Emily-
you were.
Emily
I
Atkinson.
was gonna say, I never expected people to laugh at my jokes, and in fact, if they did, I was really suspicious.
He told me one reason he liked me because I never laughed at his jokes.
So I am Kimberly Harris Wagner, and my short-term memory is acceptable. My long-term memory is abysmal. So I don't have a lot of specific stories, but I will kind of paint our relationship with the broad strokes. Our lives have intersected, as has my life with other siblings of yours in some interesting ways over the years. So I too was one of those who arrived in DC at the same time as Curtis and Michael and Emily was there and others in this group. And it was a magical time. It was really fun. And you know, there was the beach trip to North Carolina. There were just fun activities that we participated in there. And then we both left, I think at about the same time, to go to graduate school, and we were both in California at the time. And I recall I was down at UCLA and he was at Stanford, and I came to visit at one point, and you were living, I guess, with Jeanne and her husband. And so we made that connection. Roseanne was in the singles ward I was in there in Los Angeles, so we made that connection. During this time, a number of us who had been in DC had family ties here in Utah, and so we would converge here for the holidays. And so for a number of years, it was really fun. We would go New Year's Eve to like the first night celebration in Salt Lake City, and you brought siblings, I brought my sister Marnie, and so again, family connections there. And then I remember Curtis came to visit. At one point, he had since graduated and I guess was living in New York, and you were in LA for something. And we got together and we were on the beach and chatting, and he told me about this remarkable woman, Nettie, he had met. And so that was my introduction to Nettie. And as I recall, I don't think you were engaged at the time, but it looked like it was heading that direction, and just was really fun to hear about her that way. And then subsequently, you know, I got married, we moved to, my husband Tom and I moved back to Utah, and I remember we had I think a DC Friends gathering at our home, and you and Nettie were there, and then you had some kind of gathering at your parents' place, and anyway, just lots of fun connections. And more recently, we're living in Davis County now, and my neighbor's sister Kristen is married to your brother Michael, and so that's been
Small
again,
city.
yeah, fun. And our family, about 4 years ago, we were visiting in San Francisco, and when we told Curtis and Nettie, they very graciously invited us over for dinner, and that turned out to be such a memorable event for our whole family. I mean, just fabulous to be in that cool place that you had renovated, and just to get the feeling of both of you and your family, and to have our kids feel that, just they loved that. Even our son, who's rather reclusive, had a great time being in your home. And I look to you as someone who is just so smart and capable and fun, and I feel like even though you know, the time we actually lived in close proximity was long ago and comparatively short, that again, our lives have connected in these interesting ways, and my life has been much richer for having you in it.
So I'm Darren Berry, and and this is Nicole.
No, I'm gonna
Guess where to go.
Darren Berry, as in strawberry.
Thank you, Nettie. So we were roommates in New York, and I knew Curtis in DC. I knew him with some of his buddies who were here tonight, and then we wound up in New York. We wound up being roommates for 3 years. And speaking of,
Maybe longer.
could have been longer. I don't remember.
We were
anymore.
worried about being considered a common law marriage.
Common law marriage, almost there, New York, state of New York. So,
I'm gonna
and,
share.
you know, so Curtis, we used to adventure, we go with friends, we go places. And one of them was a place where we stopped in LA and talked. And guess what? I rode the airplane with Curtis from New York to LA, and who was Curtis talking about? Nettie. That trip, that same trip.
Where were you guys going?
We were on our way to Belize, I think.
Oh yeah, it was to Belize.
Belize. So
Valentine's
and then
Day.
so it was to LA, and then we got we got stuck in the airport in New York. Nettie. To LA, Nettie, to El Salvador, because we were routed there, Nettie, to Belize. It was Nettie. In fact, we were in Belize. I remember we dived the blue hole. You know what that is? Curtis didn't. I think he must have been distraught, laid out in bed, just pining about Nettie.
I've never heard any of this.
So Curtis, great guy. Lots of adventures with him. In fact, one of them, we were in Iceland, and Curtis, just two memories that really stand out. One, we're coming back to Reykjavik. This is night. We're in a van. There are, I think, 5 or 6 of us driving home, and Carmen was driving, goes around a curve, and all of a sudden, the van rolls. And we're just rolling like this. And so there were screaming, maybe there were some expletives, I don't know what it was, but we're rolling. And what does Curtis do? What do most people do when you roll? You scream and you make sure your seatbelt's on, right? Well, Curtis went like this, boom, like this, and the van is rolling like this, like a superhero stance. Spider-Man, boy. Kept the cat.